Hi, everybody. This is Vaughn Derderian. I'm the chair of the Oakland County Democratic Party, and we're bringing you another one of our series of video interviews with some of the local elected officials, people of importance around the community of Oakland County. As always, if you'd like to stay up to date on all these videos, make sure that you're following us on our Facebook page. Make sure that you are subscribed to our YouTube channel. And if you want to check out our website, ocdp.org, and make sure that you are signed up for our mailing list, you'll be getting all the latest updates on what's going on around the county. And I'm going to kind of give this a little bit of a lead in today. I'm really, honestly very excited to have this conversation with State Representative Brenda Carter, who is a wonderful person and a wonderful friend of mine. And I really think that today's conversation is to me one of the more important points of view that we are going to be able to have on the coronavirus crisis as we're all dealing with this. So Representative Carter, as I always like to start off, how are you doing? How is your family? Everybody doing healthy? Everybody sane, hanging in there in your quarantine?
Yes, Vaughn, it's kind of amazing to be shut in with my city council person, and our pooch. But both City Councilman Randy Carter and I are doing fine, and so is the pooch.
That's some constituent service right there. You can get stuff taken care of around the house really quickly.
Absolutely.
So, Representative Carter, we were talking right before we started this call about kind of how we all have different perspectives on what it feels like to be in this crisis. And something that we as that we haven't been able to cover so far is what it feels like to be an African American, as we are all facing a crisis that's disproportionately affecting the African American community in our country. So tell me a little bit about that. As a state representative who is African American, how does it feel to be dealing with sort of like almost an extra layer of crisis on top of what everybody else is dealing with?
Well, Vaughn, I really appreciate you asking me that question, because oftentimes our representation don't truly represent the communities that we're in, for a variety of reasons. And being African American and coming from a community that has socioeconomic challenges, we have to deal with a double set of circumstances. From my knowledge, we had a public act that was passed in 2007, Public Act 653, which supposed to have focused on mitigating minority disparities in Michigan. However, we come to the coronavirus, COVID-19, and we find not only in Michigan, but nationwide, there's a huge disparity when it comes to African Americans. What we found when they first came out with COVID-19 was that people who were over 60 years old, what we were told, people over 60 years old and people who have underlying health conditions would be the prime target for this virus. Well, a lot of us did not realize that the African American community has a large number of asthma cases, diabetes cases, heart disease, which is our number one killer, strokes. So you could find these health disparities, these health issues in populations from birth to death in the African American community. So what we found when this became a national focus, communities like some of the communities I have in my district, Pontiac in particular, we did not have the avenues that we necessarily needed to disseminate the information that was vital to the survival of our people in Pontiac, not just our African American community, but our community as a whole, because of our poverty rate in Pontiac and some of the communities around me. Not all of the communities in District 29 are affluent.
Right. So talk a little bit about some of the strategies that you've seen groups in the community or individuals in the community using to try and address those disparities. As you're saying, it's an extra challenge to get information out to people that don't have, necessarily broadband internet in their house, or aren't getting really accurate information. What are some ways that people have been working to try and address those challenges?
Well, I really, really appreciate you asking that question because we had to start dealing with this on a grassroots level. When I first came into office, I created 5 task force to address things on the grassroots level because the legislature is pretty structured, and each legislator is given 3 or 4 committees that fit into their expertise. One of the committees that I was given that I did not know that would be so valuable is family, children, and seniors. That committee allowed me to investigate and look at some of the disparities in my entire district and identify issues that maybe we could solve on a grassroots level instead of bubbling it all the way up to the legislature. But we were able to successfully get a couple up there as well, and I'll talk about those. But the 5 committees that we created in District 29, the first one, of course, was an education committee because we realized that our state is underfunded. I believe we were dead last when I came in the legislature. So I had to go out and find subject matter experts who were on the grassroots level who could bring forward educational issues that I could possibly bubble up in the legislature into legislation to help resolve this. The second committee that we formed, and that was by Maria Bermudez. I have to call her name because she's done a great job. The second committee was one with H. Bill Maxey. He's been a longtime advocate and fighter for our veterans. And it gives me heartburn to see our veterans on a corner with a feed me sign. So they fight for our country. We need to fight for them. So Bill Maxey took charge of that. Kimberly Bishop Yankee and I have a passion for making sure that our homeless are taken care of. So all this started about the same time last year. She took on the Oakland County Poverty and Homelessness Task Force. And I know you're on my Facebook page, Vaughn, where you see how many efforts we do as far as getting needed food out, not only to our homeless community, but during COVID-19, we're getting food out to everybody, schools, nursing homes, etc. That is the Poverty and Homelessness Task Force. So I'm going to go to the 5th one and then come back to the 4th one.
Okay.
The 5th one dealt with our criminal justice system. And Deborah Slater Black is out there working with my office to find ways to mitigate recidivism. Okay, we're working with the Michigan Department of Corrections to see if we can come up with ways like maybe even getting some of our non-violent criminals out of the prisons right now during COVID-19, because that's a national epidemic. But now let me go back to the 4th one. Because when Kenny Anderson came to me last year about heart disease in the African-American community, I told him I would look into that. And in June of last year, I introduced the bill, a resolution, HR 123, that would address maternal mortality in the Black community. That went on, and Governor Whitmer, in her State of the State address this year, addressed that as well, as she did the Poverty Task Force she created. But we had no idea when we created that task force last year that COVID-19 would strike our community. We had already started getting educational information out into our community on a grassroots level, but we needed the thing that most initiatives, like all 5 of these initiatives, need funding. Yeah. They need funding. And when you talk about getting information in the places like Carrot Circle, Arborview, the places where people may have transportation issues, where they can't get to the sources of information, we had to build a task force that would take that information to the people. I'm pleased to say we're working currently right now with a collaboration with the Northern Oakland NAACP under the leadership of Stephanie Booth to bring 1,000 KN95 masks into these facilities, into these nursing homes, into these housing developments, into the places where seniors are shut in and they're afraid to come out, or they don't want to go down assisted living. They don't want to go to the cafeteria because the virus may be there. So I'm pleased to say that the community is stepping up and doing the things to get to our people to help mitigate the cases. And if you've been looking at that wonderful diagram, that wonderful dashboard that's out there, not only with the state of Michigan, but with Oakland County under the leadership of Dave Coulter Every day, every morning when I get up, Vaughn, I go out to that site to see how many cases in Oakland County and how many deaths in Oakland County due
Yeah.
to the coronavirus. And our area, the northern part of Oakland County, is very low with cases. My
Yeah.
district is really low.
One thing that has been, it's like there's partnered things. On one hand, it's been really great to see the different ways that communities have stepped up to kind of address these problems. On the other hand, it's been really hard and upsetting that the systems that we have, that we've built, are really not able to address these problems very well. My wife worked at the casino and she was laid off. And one of the earliest things that we had to deal with as a family was the process of going through and applying for unemployment. And you're still hearing people today complaining about how the unemployment system in the state of Michigan is not really built to handle this many cases. It's not built to handle any of this. It's really built to sort of like discourage people from wanting to apply for unemployment. And we just, all of our systems were not built to handle any of this. And they were built in a lot of ways to be almost deliberately cruel and to make sure that people in need don't get help. So, those two things are existing side by side, that person to person, we're all doing what we can. We're all, you hear stories about people stepping up and, taking food to their neighbors, checking in on people in the community. But at the same time, the systems that our government has built, which is really all of us sort of writ large, those systems are failing.
Yeah, and Vaughn, I agree with you there. And I'm going to give my rationale of why I feel that's so. So I'll take the state rep hat off and just be Brenda Carter. Okay. It's impossible for people who have no idea the struggles of what a working class family goes through if they've never seen a hungry day. Okay. One of the huge fights I took on, and I'm proud to be a Democrat, is because the majority of people in Michigan are middle or below income. You have a very few people have enough income to have personal everything else they want. But we will find when it comes in the legislature or in the government, I won't say the legislature, I just say in governmental representation, that a majority of these people are not at the table. So it's very difficult for someone to expound on what is going on a hypothesis. It's better for them to be involved. And how can the system change? I believe that our governor is doing a great job. She came in and she started looking at all of these holes, and there's a lot of them, all of these holes, and all of this mentality. Because 16 months up in Lansing, I learned a lot. I really have. But when it comes to explaining to somebody, why can't you get to the unemployment office? Why? I mean, you don't even have a job.
Yeah.
Okay, because the conditions that you're living in is not inducive of having viable employment, or not inducive of you passing an exam in order to get a job that you can afford to raise your family on. And then those that do have jobs, I say hourly wage jobs, and I'm proud to be a retiree from an hourly wage job, UAW. Those are under attack by, once again, the system. So it's imperative that we understand the things that we can do as a community, as a group, to help build up our system. And that's just going back to where we used to be in the olden days, where we had the village concept.
Yeah. I've said before, and I think you might agree with me, but as a party, I think that we would be in a little bit of a better spot if we ran candidates who knew what it was like to come home at the end of the day and, have some dirt under their fingernails, to have to take a hot shower, or, even if we ran candidates who knew what it was like to shop for a comfy pair of shoes because they knew they were going to have to be on their feet for 8 hours a day, I think sometimes we would be in a better spot. And that's not to say anything bad about any of the people in our party that come from, different walks of life. But man, as somebody that worked for a long time as a bartender on my feet, and my wife has worked on her feet. And I know, you're talking about as somebody who retired from the UAW. There's a different perspective you get when you've really worked, retail or manufacturing or anything. You have a different perspective than, somebody who maybe did it for a summer or two when they were working their way through college. If you did it for survival, you have a whole different perspective.
And I totally agree with that. And one of the things that I found in this community, across the community, is the fact that a majority of my constituents fit right in that category. So it's not uncommon for me to hear a single mom sit back and say, I don't want to bring COVID-19 home to my children. However, I have to work.
Yeah.
I have to work so my children can eat. And if you've never experienced that, if you've never experienced having to choose between taking care of your child and feeding your child, then it's hard to, even imagine what you're going through when we're passing these bills that are totally oblique to what our general population is going through. So as a party, and I applaud the party because I believe in my heart that we are on the right track now. We're seeing the devastation of COVID-19. It's not just affecting our African-American community. It's affecting our Latino community. It's affecting the majority of Michiganders who are impoverished, the majority of Michiganders who are imprisoned. All the things that are socioeconomically linked. This is what this disease is attacking. And we have an opportunity. I love saying this. Instead of sitting back saying, well, oh God, all this stuff is wrong and woe is me, I'd rather sit back and say, okay, we got a flashlight on this now. We see it. What are our values? Do we want to ensure that our working families can retire? Do we want to ensure that we have health care available for everyone that needs it? Right now, there's a large population of people who are dying because they don't have health care. The whole 9 yards. We have an opportunity to bring equity to this country and what we believe are our values. And this is what I see happening in my district. It's not uncommon, and it's a beautiful thing, Vaughn, because I don't know if you know about Orchard Lake Village or Keego Harbor or Sylvan Lake or Auburn Hills. You do know a little bit about Pontiac. But when you see these communities crossing these lines, like Karen Meebrow, the councilwoman over in Keego Harbor, gave me books to take to the children over in Woodland Heights, or when you see Lila Lazarus in Orchard Lake Village willing to work with Jermaine Branner to bring health issues, health awareness to our district. You see in these crossings of lines here where we're no longer just a bunch of cities that happen to have a District 29. We're actually a community.
Yeah, and it's crucially important that unfortunately, when the systems are failing us, that people are in a spot where they have to step up. But again, this is the one of the great things about America is that we really, when we have the opportunity, we really do. And it's almost one of the things that breaks my heart the most about the protests that we've seen over the past few weeks about people talking about reopening the state. And I don't want to get too much into it because it's, kind of depressing, but it really is. It's talking about reopening, the economy, but at the expense of the people who are really frontline workers. It's one thing to say that, we need to make sure that everybody who can work should be working. It's another thing to say, well, we want to reopen the economy, but what we want to do is make sure that the service sector, that people are called back to work in the service sector so that we can go golfing. It's a weird, almost like a funhouse mirror kind of a thing. It's like, yeah, we do want to make sure that we're reopening the economy. Everybody wants to make sure that we have an economy that's working, that's generating, good jobs for everyday people. But that's not, it feels to me like what the protests are really calling for. It feels like, they're asking for kind of, they want to make sure that their way of life is disrupted as little as possible, but they don't really care at the expense of whose expense that has to come.
And Vaughn, unfortunately, that's the way it is coming across. And when you hear that the majority of deaths are from lower wage people in our country, you have to ask yourself, if we open up the economy, who will this affect the most? Who would be the most needy? Who would be the most exposed? Right now, we do not have a total scope on this virus. We don't know whether or not it's airborne. We don't know how long it will last on a tree. But yet and still, we're opening up an economy to a population who has, they are predisposed to it. So it's a little frightening for me. And personally, I really wish that in the event that we have to open up the economy, that we continue to practice the things that our scientists and our doctors are telling us to do, which is social distancing, washing your hands, making sure that you report to your doctor if you have any symptoms that are related, and then stay in tune and find out the information you need to stay informed what is the latest and greatest. Every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on my Facebook page at 3 p.m., I live broadcast the governor's press conference. So my district can hear from the governor, whether they're pro Gretchen Whitmer or anti, but they can hear from the horse's mouth where she is in this time and space, kind of like Governor Cuomo of New York. But we are able to get this information and gauge for ourselves what we need to do to protect each other, because asymptomatic people are probably one of the largest carriers of COVID-19. And from the people that I know personally, and I have to give a shout out to, you see me kind of tearing up a little bit, because I was extremely close to Isaac Robinson, the late Representative Isaac Robinson. In fact, I was the last person with him at a press conference in Detroit, fighting for, you'd be interested in hearing this, Vaughn, the rights of casino workers.
I don't know if I've said this a couple of times on interviews before, and I don't know that you know this, but Isaac and I were fairly close. We had worked together a number of times over the past dozen years, back way back when he was when he was running for city council, when he was working on Tyrone Carter's campaign. Isaac and I had worked together a lot of times over a number of years, and he was honestly just one of the most wonderful people. It really is hard. And I know we keep coming back to this, but it's hard to see like a virus like this that takes somebody like that away, who was just a genuinely wonderful person who really fought hard for the rights of people who needed help. And it's hard to go through that. That was a really hard moment for me, and I know for a lot of people, because Isaac was just a wonderful person. Yeah.
And
let's change the subject a little bit before we get too and maudlin. But let's talk as we're kind of like winding down here. I want to ask you two things. So one, I want to ask you kind of, what do you think that we should be doing as a party, or that individuals can be doing to try and communicate the important messages that we're talking about how to stay safe, how to stay healthy, and what to do? What are some ways that we can be communicating that to people who maybe need to hear it right now?
Well, Vaughn, again, thank you for asking that question. Giving a shout out to President Gloria Spann and the Pontiac Democratic Club, who is on the ground level. I've been working with them and UAW Local 653, in getting information out. But the number one thing that inhibits us from doing an effective job is funding.
Yeah.
Is funding. So what we can do is, we need to trickle some of that funding down. We need to go to our local Democratic clubs, Southfield, Pontiac, Detroit, Adrian, Traverse City, wherever we have Dems at, okay? And we need to make sure that they're healthy. We need to make sure that we engage Democrats, okay? Well, our young precinct delegates or whoever we want to get involved in the process, and get them to see that we have values. We are not complacent. We do have values that we were fighting for. And I think just the resurgence of the need for us to get out there and say, We need a change in this country. We need a change. I think we all do, not just Dems. I think we all need a change in this country. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that we empower our local uh, Democratic clubs and the caucuses so they can work effectively. And I know right now, because of the socioeconomic conditions, again, I keep on going back to that, that it's pretty hard for people to financially do what they need to do in order to be viable in their community. So I think that's a place to start. And I'm telling, I actually went to Gloria Span and said, hey, look, whatever we need to do in this area to get the message across, we're going to do. And we had an event planned on the 18th of April that unfortunately the stay-at-home shut down. But it was a collaboration between the Pontiac Democratic Club and UAW Local 653. So that's, once again, that engage in using limited resources to get the job done.
I know. I love the Pontiac Dems. The last in-person meeting we had was at UAW Local 653, and I'll tell you, man, the Pontiac Dems are amazing, and the level of energy there. And I love Gloria too, so I'll throw all the love and respect in the world at the Pontiac Democratic Club, because man, they are amazing people.
Yes.
So the second question I have, and this is kind of, let's go out on a high note. Give me a good story, or the favorite story you've heard about somebody that's kind of stepping up in this time of need and crisis. Is there any kind of story that you can give me that's been something that's given you some hope or some joy as we've gone through this?
Well, thank you for that question again, Vaughn, because where the legislators are seated during this pandemic, we are hit with the news all the time. We wake up to it, we go to bed to it, and a community like Pontiac, which is close-knit, when somebody perishes to COVID-19, the whole community just, suffers. And we have an individual, I have to call this individual out, I really do. We have an individual in Pontiac who is the son of the late Clarence Phillips, who was the mayor of Pontiac and one-time state legislator. Kano Phillips gets on Facebook all the time, and he will go like, okay, here's the trivia. Do you like Beyonce better than some person? He told me that I don't even know the name. But no, she's some singer they have right now. And if Kano watches this video, he's going to say, I hate when she's up there in age. But anyway, the point I'm making is he's keeping the community engaged and hopeful by distracting them away from the devastation of this virus. And every now and then when I go to bed and I'm tearing up because somebody close to me is either suffering with this disease or has died, I would go out there and see something that he's posted out there that would actually make me smile. Like what the latest one he had out there is, okay, everybody, go out here and put on your best outfit. And you'd be surprised. 400 or 500 people go out there, go in their closets, put on hats, put on suits, and they come out there and post their pictures. And that's the kind of spirit we need right now. That give us the inspiration to go out there and say, yeah, we can make it through this. We are going to make it through this. And not only that, we're going to make it through it better. We have learned. We see what we need to do now. We know what we need to do as a party. We know bring everybody to the table. Bring everybody to the table. I have to give a shout one more time to, sorry, Rosemary, but Rosemary Bear, it is wonderful to have a senator that you work so well with. Rosemary and I, we did the Poverty and Homelessness Caucus, as you know, up in Lansing, bipartisan, bicameral.
And I'll tell everybody watching the video, if you have not seen Brenda and Rosemary on stage together, it is an experience. They are just, joyful and resident, energetic, talking about stuff that we all should be paying attention to. And it really, it's a hard message, but man, you guys really deliver it with some enthusiasm and some joyful spirit.
Well, I'm very fortunate to have not only Rosemary, but and I would be remiss if I didn't say this. And I'm not saying this because he's my husband. I'm just saying City Councilman Randy Carter is phenomenal. This man, he's born and raised in Pontiac, so he has skin in the game, as they say, and
Right.
he will get out there no matter what, no matter what kind of risk. He cares about people. So this is what we need, Vaughn, and not only in Pontiac or District 29, we need it in our party, we need it in our state, we need it in our nation. And when we get back to there, we're going to be all right. As the governor said, we're going to get through this all. We're all going to get through this together.
Some people would call that solidarity. And
Yes.
hey, I got my red on. It's Wednesday.
Yes.
So thank you, Representative Carter. I really do. I honestly feel like I want to like reach through the screen and just give you a big Isaac Robinson hug, because I'll tell you, Isaac used to give me the biggest hugs in the world. And I really do feel a little bit better talking to you. But
thank you.
There is work in front of us, and it isn't just like Representative Carter said, this is something that all of us are going to have to find ways to tackle together. And I really do feel that one of the things that we're going to have to come out of this with is an understanding of what a just society, a just country, a just community would look like. My wife and I kind of had a thought experiment we played. This was like maybe a year ago. We were driving to work one day. We were talking about how if you had if all the managers and all the executives in the world stopped coming into work, everybody would kind of like roll on and be okay. But if all of the fast food workers and grocery store clerks and post office employees, if they stopped working, the whole society would ground to a halt. And I didn't really want to see that happen in real life, but so thank you again to Representative Carter. That was a wonderful conversation. I really do appreciate it. And as I like to wind up with, please follow us on Facebook. Make sure that you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. We're going to be doing more of these, where our goal is to have about 3 or 4 of these coming out every week. And as long as we have this crisis, as long as we need to find ways to get information out to people, we're going to keep doing this. But that does require some resources. We do, it costs us a little bit of money to try and make sure that we're getting these YouTube videos and these Facebook videos in front of people. So if you can give us a little bit of money, if you can chip in for $5, $10 a month and commit to doing that right now, it makes a huge difference. And I mean it. Having, $10 more in our bank account means that we can get a message out to hundreds and hundreds of more people and make sure that we're getting people like Representative Carter and talking to them and hearing firsthand what they're going through and the challenges that they're facing as we're all trying to navigate our way through this crisis. So thank you very much for your time today again. And I hope that all of you will make sure you're subscribed to our channel, following us on Facebook, and sign up for our email list on ocdp.org. And thank you again. Thank you to Representative Carter. And please stay home, stay safe, and we will see you in person when we get through this. Thanks.
Thank you so much.